Well, tell me, mama, what's going on? Tell me, darling, what's going on?
Welcome back, everybody. The Bacon and Egg Show, episode 58, the last day of July, the 31st, 2021. Jay, what is going on?
What's up, man? Been a little bit since we recorded. Has anything been going on or anything like that? Any new? Oh wait, yeah, we got a little bit to talk about today with a little conference realignment, man. We've been really itching to talk about this, and now we're finally getting to sit down and do it. So I'm excited to get the show going today and talk about it. What's up, man? How are you?
Oh man, doing good. We got plenty to get into here in the dog days of summer. It's kind of amazing the just what this off season is brought. Like it's insane. So yeah, man, let's get right into it. Where do you want to start?
We're not used to this type of hashtag content in the middle of the summer, but here we are. But let's start today in the cup of coffee on something that is non-Longhorn related, and I wanted to talk about Simone Biles real quick. The greatest gymnast, the greatest Olympic athlete, in my opinion, of all time. When you have 6 or 7 moves named after you and you're the only person that can do them, that sort of sets you apart. But she ran into a bit of a mental issue, a mental block, if you will, in the middle of her doing the all around or the team competition, and realized that she shouldn't be out there because she could really injure herself at the level that she performs. And took a lot of heat for that she quit on her team and the greatest of all time wouldn't do that. And I think that this is a really good opportunity for people to take a step back and start thinking about mental health in a different light, because it's not that she couldn't be there to support her teammates. It's that she knew mentally she was not going to be able to get through what she needed to get through, just because her mind wasn't going to allow her to do it. And she was lucky enough to catch it before she hurt herself, smart enough to know when to take a step back in the biggest of all stages, and in my opinion, does not deserve any of the criticism that came from a lot of people who are sitting at home on their couch and couldn't do a somersault if they had to. So it was just sort of disheartening to see the immediate backlash, but then to see the outpouring of support for her in the end. And she even commented, this has made me feel like I'm so much more than just being a gymnast.
Yeah.
I feel like a human, which is the way that we should be looking at people, and not just putting them, because we watch them on TV for our entertainment, that they need to go out there and entertain us no matter where they are with their mental health. So I was props to Simone Biles for that. And yeah, if you were hard on her for that, I think you need to reassess some things.
Yeah, for sure. And I think you nailed it. It's a perfect opportunity to talk about mental health more in sports. What was it? We were talking about this. This is back during football season, I think. Remember, we had the discussion about Dak Prescott and him kind of talking about his own personal struggles with anxiety, with depression. His brother, passed away, and he was very open and candid about those mental health struggles that he's had. And the reaction was remember, it was Skip Bayless or whatever, that was like, how can this guy be the quarterback of America's team and basically show these kinds of weaknesses, and which is all just total bullshit. That's just hot take, kind of stuff. And it's been the same with Simone Biles. Good for her. I think that's awesome for her to be able to for one, recognize it and be able to address it. Hey, I'm just not there. And if I give this a shot, I'm going to let the team down probably even more than me walking away, or I could get severely injured and my career's over. So for her to recognize that and be able to have the really the confidence and bravery to do what she did on that stage, is amazing. And yeah, people criticizing her should, I mean, yeah, reevaluate your priorities a little bit. Like it's a game.
Yeah, well, and the Skip
Um,
Bayless toxic masculinity, not toxic masculinity, just a toxic culture, I guess, that is around sports in
yeah,
general, that you can't ever show weakness, it's that locker room mentality that when you're in it, because we've both been in locker rooms, we've both been involved in that sort of a setting,
oh
and
yeah, yeah,
it's you're almost expected to, oh, you got to fight through it, and it's like,
yeah,
well, shit, man, what if I don't want to? What if I don't feel like that I'm in a place that I'm able to do that, and then I'm going to put myself in an even worse situation. So
right.
it's a really great moment in terms of being able to bring that sort of thing to light, and hopefully people that view it from that sort of unhealthy, toxic, whatever viewpoint, that this allows them to see, okay, so maybe it is okay to talk about your mental health. Michael Phelps, if you're going to talk about the greatest Olympians of all time, Michael Phelps and Simone Biles are definitely up in that
Yeah,
conversation for me. And he has been very open and honest about his struggles with mental health, and is a big proponent for it now, and has a foundation that supports kids growing up and adults. And it's like, how do you, it's good that this is becoming more in the forefront, where at least talking about it, more and more people are having this discussion about mental health. And the more often this becomes a what's the word, just a normal part
yeah,
of everyday conversation, we normalize it. The sooner that we normalize talking about our mental health, the better off we're going to be.
yeah, absolutely. And that's typically where these conversations kind of start, like the sports world. And if people can get comfortable with those discussions in the sports world, then that goes into being comfortable talking about it in the normal real world. And so I
Right.
think it's a start, and hopefully it's a sign of, better conversations to come. So
Yeah, and hopefully those jabronis at home on their couch have gotten enough. Somebody gave them a reality check or something, because man, it's just I don't understand that mindset, and I'm glad that Simone Biles feels good about where she is and about the decision that she made, because she should.
absolutely, absolutely, she'll be back. That's what, she'll bounce back
Well,
and go
I mean,
win some more.
she hadn't lost an all-around meet in over 8 years. I don't understand what more you want from somebody. Like, she hadn't lost. They literally have to adjust the scoring on the moves that she does to make it even remotely fair for the people that are competing against her. Like, aside from the fact that she's a sexual assault survivor, she was not protected by the organization that was supposed to protect her in USA Gymnastics, that then went ahead and protected Larry Nassar, who's in jail for a long time and he'll die there. And she's overcome all this stuff. She's raised by her grandparents. All of these things that she's gone through to still be as good as she is, and then for someone to sit there and criticize her for something like this is the most absolutely asinine thing that I can think of. So anyways, sorry to get, I mean, that all just came to me right there, man, where I was just like, dude, it's unreal to me that somebody would feel the need to criticize her. But anyways, that Suni Lee ended up winning the gold in the individual women's all around, which is a great story, and it's on its own. She has her own great story. And now to be the gold medalist, to still bring that gold medal home back to the United States for the gymnastics program is such a huge deal. And Simone Biles was there to support her and cheer her on. And Suni Lee said, I could hear Simone, I could hear my teammates in the stands cheering for me, and it made such a difference. And she was able to do that. So it's however you can contribute, whatever you feel like you can do, everybody, to whatever you feel like you can contribute it and feel good about it, and know that you did the best that you could, because you don't have to meet other people's expectations all the time, as long as you're meeting your own. And that's a super important thing make sure we walk away with this from. So anyways, man, yeah, it just got me worked up because it's such a tough conversation. People don't take it seriously enough. So
It is, absolutely. I'm glad we discussed that because it is important. So
well,
man,
man, we got outside of the Olympics going on and some great stuff happening. There's also some little bit of
a little
conference
news.
realignment, little news here, Kerry, that we've been itching to talk about here. So tell
And
me
where do
what's
we even
happening.
start with this?
The Big 12 is, as we know it, is dead.
Yeah, basically, or at best, like on life support.
Yeah,
it's
with knowing you're going to get the plug pulled in a minimum of 4 years or so.
yeah, at the latest. But we'll get to kind of what happens to the now remaining schools in the Big 12. But let's kind of go through the timeline here of how this all went down, because this was completely out of left field. Just sitting around enjoying the middle of the week last week, and then this story starts hitting social media and coming out from the Houston Chronicle that Texas and OU have been in conversations with the SEC over moving. The person that broke the story is on the Texas A&M beat for the Houston Chronicle, and has been a long time like Aggie writer and has connections over there. And this, of course, drops the day that A&M was speaking, or it was A&M's turn at SEC Media Days. Their athletic director gets caught off guard and asked about this story that was coming out. And like, it just, you all, like, there's so many rumors and everything about conference realignment, especially like revolving around the Big 12 over the last, since its inception.
Mm-hmm.
It was dysfunctional conference, essentially, like from the start, basically. So there's always been those rumors. And of course, when schools moved on and came in, like, but this was pretty, this is not one, and we've talked about this over the years. Like, if Texas were to leave the Big 12, what would be the destination? How would this all work?
Yeah.
What's the best fit? And I honestly never really considered the SEC to be a legit option. I just didn't see that. Like, it just didn't feel like the right fit for Texas. But here we are. Texas, as of yesterday, the University of Texas Board of Regents approved they signed off on the official invitation from the SEC after Texas and OU officially asked for admission. Like, it's done. It's Texas and OU are now in the SEC. What the hell happened last week?
Well, this is obviously something that has been brewing for a while, and both schools did such a nice job of keeping things under wraps. And again, that's a Chris Del Conte thing as well, because with the coaching hires that have been made, this conference realignment thing that has happened, every move that he's made, or that the athletic department has made, I should say, since he's been the athletic director, Belmont is damn near airtight these days, man. Like, there are no leaks. And the leaks that do happen are probably by design, because like nobody knew about this, including Texas A&M, who had not been included in any of those conversations. And that was the big reason, like you said a little bit ago, about how they were caught so off guard at media days, because they truly had no clue that these conversations were taking place, and they felt betrayed by that. Which, on one hand, I kind of understand why you would feel that way, but I also don't know why you thought that you had that sort of pull. Like, I guess if you joined under this certain umbrella that, we're getting away from this, we're coming to join you, we're bringing something to your conference that you don't already have, and that makes us valuable, so we should be a part of those conversations if things like this are going to happen. But then again, you're the guy that just got brought into the conference later on to help boost the conference from what it already was, which was already a national power in football to begin with. And let's be clear, all of this is about football. This has nothing to do with this is nothing to do with any other sport.
No.
This is about football. The money driver, the big ticket item. This is about football, and the money that Texas and Oklahoma will bring as an athletic department. But this is mostly about football. And you're right earlier when you were talking about the fit. Like, where did we see Texas as a fit? It usually was in the Pac-12. Those discussions that we had were usually based around the fact that we just figured Texas would end up out west. We'd be watching, there'd be 9:00 start time central time, because it's starting at 7 out on the West Coast, and that would be the toughest thing that we'd have to deal with. Well, now that's not the case. We went the other direction, and looking at a conference division that will have A&M, Oklahoma, and Arkansas, most likely. And I didn't necessarily, as a fan, need to have an A&M game. I honestly was, if that never happened again, I wouldn't have cried about it. Like, it wouldn't have bothered me if Texas and Texas A&M never played again. I didn't, whatever. It's fine. You move on. That's your choice. Texas is going to do their own thing, whatever. Arkansas was another team that it's like, you think of the historical rivalry between Arkansas and Texas, the great Southwest Conference battles that, it just goes back and back and back. And now to think every single year, Texas will have a chance to play Oklahoma, Texas A&M, and Arkansas on an annual basis. Now that this has happened, I can't imagine a schedule in 5 years without those three teams every single year.
Right.
That is one of the more exciting parts about this to me, is to get those regular games back in on the football schedule every single year. And that's not even including the fact that you're going to get to, because basically the SEC will probably be set up in a way to where there's 4 divisions. You play, and 4 teams in 4 divisions. You play every team in your division each year, all 3 other teams, and then 2 of the other schools from each of the other divisions, and it'll rotate through every 6 years. You'll get a home game against, let's say, for instance, you'll get a home game against Alabama, and you'll get an away game against Alabama every 6 years in that cycle is what you'll get. Georgia, LSU automatically becomes, instantly becomes another Florida.
Auburn.
Like this is not the football schedule. And speaking to someone on the screen with me that is a season ticket, that has been a season ticket holder in the past, is a Longhorn Foundation member. I imagine that this football schedule, is going to look a little bit better in your eyes than what we've been dealing with over the last,
well, that was
decade plus.
That was my initial reaction, really, when kind of processing all this, was the feeling of like, yeah, because you mentioned the Pac-12, like that was always kind of the first one mentioned, because like Texas has always kind of had an eye west, like you said, and like it almost happened. We have history, like we have something that nearly happened a decade ago to actually go off of, to say like, well, yeah, the Pac-12 is probably going to be what it is, because Texas already attempted to do that a decade ago. And they're a conference that's been struggling to get eyeballs in the central time zone and be nationally relevant, get teams in the playoffs. It just seemed like if the Big 12 was going to fold, that would kind of be where Texas ended up. But man, I have to say, like, I'm pretty thrilled about this SEC move. And a lot of that has to do, like you said, with the schedule. And it's like, and I know people are like, oh, well, if Texas was winning games like against the Big 12, like maybe it'd be different. But like, ever since A&M left the conference, Texas hasn't had a real home rivalry game every other year kind of thing. It's like we got the OU game in Dallas, which is amazing, and that's going to stick around. But there just wasn't that one game, like a game at home every year against a real rival that, and I just felt like the Thanksgiving games with Tech or whoever just seemed kind of, it just didn't seem the same. So that was my first reaction, was they'll probably be, it'll probably be one of those situations where Texas plays Arkansas on the road one year, and then it's the A&M games at home. So, and if you rotate those every year, Texas will be playing Arkansas or A&M in Austin. Like, and like you said, that's not even going into whoever is on like the SEC schedule that's rotating around. It feels like, um, the money's worth for the season ticket holder just goes up with this. I'm thrilled about it, and but I mean, God, that's before even getting it. Can you imagine the baseball schedule? Like, I mean, we were, when we were talking about the Slugging Horns, like imagine that conference baseball schedule: Vanderbilt, Mississippi State, Arkansas, LSU, all that, just Florida. Like,
It's nice.
It's going to be fantastic. I'm thrilled about it. I'm glad to like bring back some historic rivals, like rejoin with them. I was in the same boat with you about the A&M game. If that game wasn't like, we've been without it for a decade. Like if it didn't come back, whatever. I am excited about getting the Arkansas game back though. That's a rivalry that was a little before our time, like the real blood and guts of it. And I'm sure, in your case, I mean, as well, like talking to people that were in the middle of that back in the 60s and 70s that were like, man, that was the rivalry. Like that was one of the best. I mean, the game of the century in 69, like those were two powerhouses just going back and forth. And OU wasn't a conference opponent at that point. So that was the Southwest Conference battle. And I'm excited to get that back and like live that rivalry. So as long as they don't bring back like Matt Jones or whatever to play quarterback and run for like.
Please don't. Please. Oh. No, let's not relive that. But yeah, no, I mean, that's like I said, I could have done without it. And now that I know it's going to happen, I don't want to be without it. And that just to have those games on the schedule every single year, it will be a treat. And like you said, just rotating in, whether it's Alabama or Georgia or LSU or Florida or Ole Miss or Auburn or, there's
Tennessee,
so
when they get their act together, that's a big time.
Whenever they figure that out over there. But yeah, no, like you said, the baseball will improve, and I think it's an interesting time for the basketball program.
Yes,
because with now that there's more hype on this campus than there's ever been, like just pure hype. Like I don't know, even in peak Rick Barnes, was there ever this much hype
right
around the program? So if Texas does end up, if this is the swan song for the Big 12 this season, if this does end up being the last school year for the Big 12, then Chris Beard's opening up a brand new building, joining a weaker conference for basketball, in my opinion, and is able to put on a show in that. There was already expectations. Now you're moving to a conference that doesn't have as many as, the Big 12 in a lot of circles has been considered the best conference in the country over the last 3, 4, 5 years.
Right.
In terms of just trajectory, quality of teams at the top, and then not just falling off a cliff in the middle of your conference in terms of talent. Yeah, there's some bad teams in the Big 12, don't get me wrong, but like the Big 12 has been a really good basketball conference lately. And then you take a move to the SEC and you're not looking at as tough of a road night in the night out, which can get you beaten up, and then you get to the first round and lose. Okay, we're not going to do it. So
no, but like with the SEC, with the basketball programs, like sure, like the Big 12, I agree. Like we've talked about that on this show quite a bit about how just solid the Big 12 is in basketball, and like arguably the best conference in the country for the last few years. But there are programs in the SEC that have also had a lot of recent success as well. LSU's put together some runs. I Alabama's been decent lately. Florida's won national titles this, not to mention Kentucky. Like
Right.
they're like in Tennessee, Rick Barnes is going to be coming back to Austin, assuming he's still with Tennessee around that time. But like those are it's a solid conference. It maybe
Sure.
doesn't have the top end quality that the Big 12 has, but like it's going to be I think it's a pretty decent league. It's not not the Big 10 or the Big 12, but like those are some marquee programs that have put together runs recently, and it's going to be fun. It's going to be I think it's going to be a blast.
I do too, and I think that it's going to take on those nights where some of those other teams are coming in, because yeah, there are some big names in that you think of when Kentucky coming in here twice, coming to Moody Center twice a year. Tennessee, Rick Barnes coming in to pay a visit, at least once a year. That sort of thing. It's like those are some of those schools. But then on the lower end of the schedule, it's going to be up to Chris Beard to keep that quality of basketball at a point where people are still coming to watch some of those games. And I think that the environment that will be created at the Moody Center is going to be one that makes people want to be there. It's like we've been to a lot of Austin FC matches. And there's an excitement around that team. It's an expansion team. There's a lot of excitement around it.
Yep.
The fan base is excited. But even though they haven't been winning a ton, they're not beating the brakes off anybody. They can barely find a way to score goals. But the environment at the stadium makes people want to come back, even though the team might not be performing at their best right now.
Right.
And that's the type of a thing that Chris Beard is going to be tasked with, is filling that center, that brand new arena, no matter who's coming into town. And the SEC schedule is going to make that harder on him, because there's going to be some stinkers that roll through town on a more regular basis than they would have in the Big 12. So that's a good problem to have. That's a double-edged sword, because you want your team to not have to do the night in and night out rigors of a Big 12 schedule, but it's still a decent enough conference to where you're going to have to show up every single night. So I don't mean to write off SEC basketball, but it's like there's two ways to look at that, and I think Beard will be fine. But I mean, it's just the amount. This is, again, we talk about follow the money, right? Like this is about football. This is about money, and in college sports, those two are tied together. Except for except for March Madness and the basketball tournament and the TV deal for that. Basically, every other bit of revenue, except maybe a small percentage, comes from football. So this is preparing for what's to come. This is Texas being proactive and not waiting for the Big 12 to just be a lame duck conference. And then what happens if you get stuck in a situation that isn't favorable to you, that doesn't benefit you as much? You're Texas, you're going to be able to make some decisions and make some phone calls. But can you think of a more desirable place if these super conferences do come to fruition, as we've discussed? Is there a more desirable place than to be in the SEC right now?
No, and I'm glad you mentioned. I mean, the money is obviously such a huge factor in this, and let's talk about a little bit like what brought on this move and kind of why now. The contracts, the grant of rights, all those things don't expire in the Big 12 till 24-25 season, I think.
Right.
And so why now? And there was the reports a few months ago about the TV partners for the Big 12 basically going to the conference and saying, like, we're not going to pay you more than what you're getting now. Like, at the same time, the SEC got a monster TV contract. The Big 10 has a monster TV contract. And basically the Big 12 was told, like, yeah, we're just not all that interested in it. And I think that was the first thing that made Texas know you, at least in this recent round of realignment, say like, okay, if we're not even going to get like fair market TV money for this conference kind of thing. Like we need to start looking around. And then also OU mentioned it this week. Another big driver in their decision to, make this move with Texas was they were angry with Fox. They were angry with the conference's main TV partner because they're playing Nebraska this year, the 50-year anniversary of their game of the century. And, part of this has to do with Nebraska being just god awful since they've moved to the Big Ten. But Fox put that game, which is going to be a big deal for OU, at an 11 o'clock in the morning time slot. And Oklahoma was furious, as they should be.
Yeah.
And they said it this week. Like, that was a big driver, that they were unsatisfied with the TV partners. They're unsatisfied with the conference, who wasn't driving any, additional money and all those things. And the writing was on the wall at that point, that Texas and OU needed to do something different. I mean, there's been a lot of numbers thrown around this week. And a couple of the numbers that really caught my eye was that, right now the schools in the Big 12 are basically bringing in, like, I guess $37 million in revenue off these deals. With Texas and OU gone, that value will be about $9 million a year for the remaining Big 12 schools. That shows you what the TV partners and all those, like, what they think of those programs. And, those are programs that have had success, and I mean, shit, Baylor's just won the national title in basketball. Iowa State playing for Big 12 championships. They're a top 10 team in football heading into the season. But
until Matt Campbell takes a better job, but
yeah. But like, those schools just don't drive the, like, they're
right.
They just don't drive the eyeballs. That's why people are like, well, Texas couldn't even win the Big 12. That's why they're leaving. It's like, well, no, actually, it's because Texas is a substantially more valuable program than the other schools in the conference.
Yeah.
Along with Oklahoma, of course. But, like,
yeah,
the money explains all of this.
I don't think people should mistake this conversation as like, oh, Texas as a football program is on the same level as the SEC powers. That's not what this is about. This is about being the most powerful brand
right
in college and getting paid what you're worth as a brand and being exposed in the way that you should be as a brand, as opposed to being hamstrung by a piss poor conference with bad leadership.
Awful.
And a lack of, I guess a lack of room for growth, if you will, what there's a ceiling in this conference in terms of how you will be viewed. And when you leave an awful conference to go to one that does, by the way, there are no exit fees to leave the SEC. This is something that I learned this week, because when certain schools were threatening to maybe leave.
Which one?
When our friends in College Station were threatening to leave, or not threatening to leave, but causing there's gonna be an investigation into this.
We're gonna have to think about our status in this conference.
And then it comes out, well, there are no exit fees. If you don't want to be here, you can leave.
The door's right there.
Somebody's gonna be willing to crawl over hot burning coals to take your place in this conference. So this is about a brand increasing the value of another brand.
Yeah.
And getting proper value for what you're worth. And again, this is not we know where Texas football has been since 2009. Like, the shirt I'm wearing today is the last time that Texas football was relevant nationally. And it was from the national championship game against Alabama that Colt McCoy got hurt. That was the last time Texas was relevant nationally. We understand that. These are not, do we wear burnt orange glasses on this show sometimes? Perhaps. But
maybe.
This is looking, maybe. But we are very understanding that Texas has not been relevant nationally since this game, since this period on the football field. In going to the SEC is the most relevant thing that Texas football has done since this game. It's not beating Georgia in a Sugar Bowl. Sugar Bowl, right?
Yep.
It's not that game. It's not winning 10, that being your 10th win of the season and beating Georgia in a Sugar Bowl. It's not that. This joining the SEC is the most relevant thing that this football program has done since early 2010. Okay, and that should alone should have supporters of the football program excited. And I think that there is quite a bit of buzz about this. I don't think you're hearing a lot of Texas fans that are saying, man, I really wish we would have made that Big 12 thing work. This is the right deal. It's the right time. And it is the correct move. And I think we give CDC, we give Chris Del Conte a lot of credit on this show. And we criticize him when it's deserved. Securing this move right now, along with, you work with your biggest rival to make this happen.
Right.
And you kept it under wraps and you were able to pull this off and not be scrambling, because Texas shouldn't scramble. Texas shouldn't be, oh my gosh, we don't know what we're going to do and we're out and we're scrambling. And no, Texas and Oklahoma, for that matter, understood where they stand. That's not the right phrase to say. They understood where they are in the hierarchy of things. They understood that they had the power to make this decision, to push this forward, and they made it happen. So really big props to CDC for that. And this is going to only raise the level of everything that this athletic department does.
Well, I'm glad you made a point on the administration, because in addition to CDC, like Jay Hartzell, university president, yep. Like all these, like, people talk about the Texas program in the last decade, just when you look at, but see, just looking at like purely at the football program, I don't think is fair, because there's been such a mess in the administration at Texas that, you're talking about going from Bill Powers to like, who was the last president before Hartzell? Finvis. Like, Hartzell's from all, discussion about him as a guy that follows the athletic department closely. He's a huge Longhorn sports fan, alum, all those kinds of things. And he was one of the big drivers of this move to the SEC. He could see the writing on the wall. But like, the last decade has been such a mess of leadership at UT, at least with regards to like how the athletic department was run. Steve Patterson was a disaster at AD. DeLoss Dodds did a lot of great stuff at Texas, but he kind of, along with Mac, both kind of stayed longer than probably necessary. Mike Perrin was an interim AD that had never served in an athletic department before. It's all these things. And now there's a leadership core that is 100% aligned with the goals of advancing the university as a university, but also advancing the athletic department. And when you look at it, like the way that the leadership has been, it shouldn't be surprising that the football program has been as much of a bumbling joke for the last decade. And now and that's what like people, Texas is moving to the SEC and they're just going to get beat every year and just be awful. And it's like, it's Texas. That's not going to be the case. It might be a rough start as Steve Sarkisian builds this program. But at least now, I think it might have been Chris Del Conte that said the quote about like coaches win games or whatever, or I think, this might have been Tom Herman, that coaches win games, but administrations win championships. I think there's a lot of truth to that.
Definitely.
I think there's a lot of truth to that. And that's where it just seems like it's the right setup. You move to the SEC, you get that, not only do you now kind of eliminate Texas A&M's main like recruiting pitch, but it's Texas. It's always going to be an attractive place for recruits. and top-notch coaches and all those kinds of things. To suggest that like Texas is just going to go be a bottom feeder in the SEC is ridiculous.
Yeah, it is.
That's not going to be the case. And Texas, if there was anything that Texas could do to get back, this was the move.
Yeah.
100%.
Well, and that should give supporters of this university confidence as well, knowing that, because you can look back now and see every single misstep
Yeah.
along the way. And now all of a sudden, every hire that Chris Del Conte has made has been the right one so far. Every single hire he's made. And we have to remember that Tom Herman was not a Chris Del Conte guy.
Nor was Shaka Smart.
Neither was Shaka. Basically every other program, though, he's made a hire on, or a lot of, like all the way through. He's going to have to. Have they figured out the swimming and diving situation yet? Now that the best coach in the history of everything is retired. Are you serious?
Yeah.
Well, see, there you go.
He's coming back for another year.
So there you go. Yeah, Del Conte worked the magic again, I guess. There you go. So, but again, it's like, if you're paying attention to sports on the 40 acres and you see the success that every single coach that he's hired has had, what makes you think that Steve Sarkisian and Chris Beard won't be successful, just based off of the success and the history of the success with the hires that Chris Del Conte has made on this campus? It's not a guarantee. I understand that. There's a lot of things that go
exactly.
into it. But it's hard not to feel good, not to feel confident, maybe is the word I should use, about these hires that were made within a pretty close amount of time with each other here. And so not only are you changing the face of the front door of your university, but you're also changing the address. And it's all going to be like, if somebody feels like Texas, like you said, will not be successful, will not find a way to be successful in the SEC, I'm trying to figure out who they're trying to convince that to, themselves or somebody else.
Well,
because
exactly.
It's not realistic.
Exactly. And that's what I mean. These things, you can always go both ways on it. Like there's, the Texas fans that are thinking that Texas is just going to roll into the SEC, whatever season it's going to be. We'll get to that in a minute. But thinks that they're just going to roll into the SEC and just start clobbering teams. No, that's not going to be the case.
Nope.
Sark is still trying to build up a program. Like that's not going to be the case. But on the flip side of it, the fans that hate Texas, and there's plenty of, as much as Texas is a successful brand, part of that is the amount of people that hate Texas.
Mm-hmm.
And that's another thing with the Big 12 we'll get to in a second. But like, the program is going to be fine. Like, and I do wonder, it is interesting kind of looking back at this now that we kind of know that Texas and OU had been in communication with the SEC for at least 6 months, how much the personnel changes have to do with an eye on that. For Steve Sarkisian, who is essentially being tabbed as Nick Saban's coach in waiting and successor at Bama, people go, why would he leave that situation to go to Texas? Well, for one, it's Texas. He's had a lot of success in the SEC. Was there something about, hey, we're, keep this under wraps, but we're looking at a move to the SEC. And if you can get this thing on the right track, you're not going to have to worry about being left out of the playoffs like USC and these schools out West have to worry about now. Chris Beard, hey, here's our project. We're building a new arena and we're moving to the SEC. And you won't have to coach against Tech anymore. Yeah. To maybe like, hey, I know you don't want to leave Tech. You got good people over there, but you're not going to have to worry about playing them all that much. Like how
and
much?
That's something. Yeah. I feel like it did play a part. I feel like you're spot on because, yeah, Texas is Texas, and usually you could say, hey, it's a good job. Like even though basketball has not been the most successful program, it's still a really good job. Like, people want to work in Austin, Texas. Like, it's a good job. And to be able to give that option to Chris Beard, and then on the football front to Steve Sarkisian, say, hey, yeah, we're Texas. Yeah, this is a great opportunity for you to get back in head coaching, but also we're going to be back in the SEC in a year. When they ask you, there's that soundbite that they play on local radio where, you know, the voice of the Longhorns, Craig Way, is asking Steve Sarkisian, and he's like, well, you know, why Texas? And Sark goes, well, why not? Well, that would make a little more sense if you already know you're going back to the SEC. All these things are in place. Why wouldn't you leave Alabama as the quote unquote coach in waiting under the greatest coach, probably the greatest coach of all time?
Yeah.
Why would you leave that situation for a program that hasn't done anything relevant since this game that I'm wearing on my shirt? Oh, maybe because you already know that you're probably going to end up in the SEC. I think that there's a very good possibility that was used as a bargaining chip, as sort of a, you know, let's push you over the edge here. Let's get you here. We're going to do this. We're making this happen, sort of a thing. I think that's a great point to make, Kerry. And I think that will, you know, that we may never know. We may never.
Yeah, of course.
Now, if either one of those coaches, if that was a part of the discussion, but I think that's a very fair point to bring up, and I think there's a very good possibility that you could be exactly right.
Well, and you know, as we talk about this and we talk about the different programs in each conference, I think another interesting thing is it's a totally different feel going into the SEC where there's coherent leadership. Like, could you ever imagine a scenario where the Big 12 working with whatever schools would have been able to keep anything like this under wraps for at least 6 months? You know, like
No.
the fact that the SEC had enough self-awareness to keep Texas A&M completely out of the loop on this because they know A&M would try to bomb this thing out. Like, you know, Aggies will hate that, but you are who you are. So the SEC being aware of, like, okay, let's not have them in on these conversations because they'll try to bomb it.
They literally tried to bomb it out within.
That's why the story came out. Yeah.
Literally tried. That's exactly what happened. Yeah.
Right.
So,
and at that point, things were basically already done. As we see now, less than a week later, Texas and OU are members of the SEC, but like it's a different feeling for Texas and OU to go into a conference with peers in terms of athletic success and the way that their departments are run. Like, you know, for Texas and OU to be in the Big 12 every week, Texas was playing a team that Texas was their number one. They spent their entire offseason preparing to beat Texas because that would make their season. Where Texas can go in the SEC and, like, you know, besides Arkansas, A&M, and Oklahoma, like, there's not, like, it's a different feel. You know, Auburn, you know, Texas goes to Auburn and plays. It's like, it's a big program and all that, but it's not the, like, oh, we just absolutely hate Texas like every other school in the Big 12 is. I don't know if that makes sense. Like, it's just a different feeling to kind of be like, you know, people, you know, all this, you know, everybody in the Big 12 hates Texas so much, but now that Texas is leaving, they're realizing, like, oh no, like how important Texas was to the conference. But now in the SEC, it's kind of like, it's nice to be with a group of universities and programs that are like, hey, come on in.
No,
you'll figure, you know, you'll see where, but we, you know, we have our own rivals. Of course, we're going to want to beat Texas, but we've got our own thing going on here.
Every year that Texas game is those teams. It's that team Super Bowl. You know, you're going to Austin. We're going to Austin this year. We're circling that one on the calendar because we're going to want to go show out there and beat their ass and make a fool out of them because they're Texas and because they're the big dogs. even in a down decade, beating Texas still made some team seasons. Like, even though Texas hasn't been good on the whole, that was still that exactly how you described it. It's like, oh yeah, it's Texas. Everybody gets up to play Texas. Everybody, no matter what the sport, as a target. And when you're not as good and you're a wounded animal and the other schools can smell that, it's even more, there is even more of a sense of urgency for we got to beat Texas now because they're down. And it's a week in and week out grind of that, where it's going to be a different kind of grind in the SEC. It's going to be every single week you're going to have quality opponents that have had some sort of success, that have a tradition of success, that don't necessarily view you as their Super Bowl every single time you see them on the schedule. They take you seriously. They take you seriously as a competitor, but you're not their. This isn't the cocktail party. This isn't the
Iron Bowl.
The Iron Bowl. Exactly. There are no ties to that, right? So it's definitely a different kind of grind that Texas will have to face, but it's not we're shooting to knock Texas off, and if we win that makes our season type of grind. So that's another good point to make, Kerry, and it's just a different feel. That's what a different feel to it. It is definitely a different feel, and it's a different. I think that's something that Texas fans should embrace not always having to be the biggest villain on the block. It's fun to play the heel. It's fun to be the bad guy. Like, it's more fun to be the bad guy than the baby face. But Texas has to embrace the fact that they won't always, there's going to be a lot of this shit, there's going to, all of that. There's going to be a lot of that still. And that you got to let that water off your back, guys. Like, we need to accept the fact that the horns down is a thing. And just, if you have to use my hand signal to show support for your team, that's more of a reflection on you as a person than it is anything else. So if you want to do your horns down, it doesn't bother me. And there will be plenty of that around all the stadiums that they visit to. But it's just going to be a different feel to it. It's going to have a different vibe. And will there be some missteps along the way, getting a feel for the conference, sort of having an understanding? Man, going to Athens, Georgia, playing between the hedges, that's a place where I've always thought about wanting to go see a football game. And now Texas is going to play there guaranteed once every 6 years.
The swamp. Death
There's
Valley.
so many environments to go to have to go into for the first time for some of these for some of these schools. Texas will not have visited them ever, and if it has, it hadn't been for a long time. So there will be a learning curve, I believe. But if Sark can get this offense going this season and set the tone for that, and because honestly, right now, I mentioned we were looking at the show prep before ahead of time, and we said, well, there's not a lot of recruiting news right now to discuss with the football program. There just hasn't been a lot of movement. But the biggest driver of that will be the season starting.
Yeah.
Recruits getting their eyes on the product, getting their eyes on what that Steve Sarkisian offense is going to be, putting guys into positions to be successful, which is something that we have begged for and begged for and begged for. And we discussed under a Tom Herman regime that openly said that as a team, the defense you have to take what the defense gives you instead of dictating the pace of the game. That's the type of thing that I believe we're going to see under Steve Sarkisian. And that's the sort of thing that's going to get this recruiting ball really rolling here for the 2022 class. And that's what, it has to get on the field though. And it's important that they have a good showing this year, especially now, knowing that Texas could start playing in the SEC as soon as the 2022 football season. That's still on the table. So it's that much more important now that Steve Sarkisian has this football program at least looking like one
That's developing.
Yes, development of a program of players and development of a program.
Look better than you did at the beginning of the season.
Yes. And
And
that's going to make all the difference. And if he can do that, then the sky is the absolute limit for the types of recruiting classes he's going to bring in, for the type of talent. There hasn't been a lack of talent at Texas. Let's understand that too. There's not been a lack of talent on this campus. There's been an absolute failure and lack of development once these players get on campus. An absolute failure. These coaching staffs that have come through here have failed. The players that committed to them have failed the university, have failed everything around them in terms of putting these players into positions to be successful and improving themselves and improving those players to give themselves the best shot to play on Sundays. They have failed miserably. Guys like Sam Cosmi are in the NFL and were an earlier round pick in spite of the coaches that were on campus. So it's that much more important now that Steve Sarkisian gets the ball rolling early. That, again, eye test, right? We always talk about the eye test. What does this program look like in game 1? What do they look like in game 12? Eye test. If he can pass the eye test, Steve Sarkisian, this ball will be rolling by the time Texas gets into the SEC. If it's in 2022, if it's in 2023, whatever it is. And it starts off against a team in the top 25 in Louisiana that is coming to Austin that people shouldn't sleep on. And I think we've talked about that once or twice, and we will again when we preview this season. But that's not a gimme. This is a Louisiana program that won 10 games, that as a great coach and is in the top 25, will be in the top 25 to start the season. So that's a test. Should Texas on paper beat the brakes off of Louisiana? Yes. But I'm not the most confident person going into that week 1 matchup.
No.
Because why should we be? Why should we just feel? It's been year after year after year of playing down to competition. So even though some might say Texas doesn't even deserve to be ranked higher than Louisiana going in, I think they will be. I think Texas will be a top 20 team going in the polls, if not higher. If it's earned or not, that's not the debate here. They'll be in the top 25. That'll be a top 25 matchup on week 1.
You think Texas will go ahead and get the pre-SEC rankings boost that?
Yes. Yeah.
Texas would be top 20, but now that they're an SEC school, they're going to be top 15 heading into the season.
Hey, even just the association with the SEC elevates you as a program.
Best thing is not having to care about bowl games that anymore. Like Georgia didn't want to be at that Sugar Bowl, so like now Texas can do the same thing. Like SEC program, if it's not the playoffs, we don't.
Yeah.
We don't care. Well, I will say this on the recruiting thing, and kind of tying this in with the big picture of this move. Like, people imagine, okay, there's 2 scenarios where in both scenarios Steve Sarkisian has the program up and running, is back competing nationally, and all those things. It looks completely different in the SEC in the sense of, like, okay, think about Oklahoma. How many conference championships in a row have they won? And how many playoffs have they been to? They're one of the premier programs in the country, one of the most successful ones over the last, however long.
Right.
But what's the biggest knock on them? In recruiting and all those things, in perception, they're not in the SEC. Recruits would rather go play in the like, and that's where like even if Texas got this thing up and rolling right now in the Big 12, and the Big 12 remained, that would still be something that hangs over Texas. Well, that's great. Well, they're not competing in the SEC. Recruits still want to go play in the SEC. This completely eliminates that argument. And that way now, if Texas gets this going, and that's why I'm curious to see what Oklahoma does as well. That's been the
Yeah,
big knock
it's
on them. And they've, even going back to Bob Stoops, they were not good postseason performers. But now that they're
right.
going to be playing these games week in and week out, like I'm curious to see how Oklahoma starts to build their program even further and how much of the recruiting is going to change, because now recruits are going to be like, well, hell, I can go play quarterback under Lincoln Riley and play in the SEC.
That when you ask what the biggest knock against Oklahoma was, the first thing that actually came to my mind was postseason play, bowl games, and stuff like that. But the SEC thing is absolutely true in terms of recruiting. But when I think of the biggest knock on big game Bob Stoops was that they, when they got to the end of the season and were playing for a national championship, or were playing in a Fiesta Bowl against Boise State, or were playing, any of those things, it was like couldn't finish in that moment. And but Oklahoma should absolutely be like, Texas is not going to go to the SEC and all of a sudden get out of the shadow of Oklahoma. Obviously, it'll be in the same division. We'll still be competing in recruiting, but you're not competing against Oklahoma going to the SEC and you're stuck in some lame duck conference. You're both moving over. You're both gaining that advantage, which was obviously why Texas A&M pitched a fit about Texas coming over, because like you mentioned earlier in the show, that was the one advantage that, or one of the advantages, I guess, maybe in the recent years that A&M had over Texas on that recruiting front. And Oklahoma should, and I don't know that Oklahoma should worry, I guess, fans of the SEC just as much, if not more, than Texas, especially in this given moment right now, because they have been the more successful program. They've been the more consistent program. They've been they will go down as the best program in the history of the Big 12 conference for whatever that means. But like they will, period. And the SEC not only gained, quite possibly the biggest and most recognizable brand in the country in Texas, but is also gaining a very successful Oklahoma football program. And Oklahoma is not up and down the board in their athletic department. They definitely don't have the success that Texas does, but football is the driver here. And Oklahoma as a university will benefit, just like Texas will, from being in the SEC. And if they use that to elevate the rest of their programs as well, that's only a good thing for this conference. That can only help the conference for a rising tide raises all ships, right? And that's what we're seeing here is the SEC as a conference and Texas and Oklahoma as sort of partners in this deal, understanding like, hey, if we come into your conference, it's going to help us, but it's definitely going to help you too. And everybody in those conversations recognize that, and they're able to get this done. And we are starting to see the death of the NCAA, in my opinion. This is one of the first steps towards, at least in terms of football, we are seeing these super conferences that are starting to form. And don't think that these other conferences aren't looking at this and saying, oh shit, we better have our ducks in a row here, because the SEC is already going to be ready for this. They're already going to have a 16-team conference sooner or later lined up, that it's going to be like, well, we're ready for this. We're ready for the super conference thing. What are you jabronis going to do? Yep. We're ready. So like, how will these dominoes in the Big Ten seems to be fine. Michigan's not going anywhere. Ohio State's not going anywhere. They have their flagship schools there. The Pac-12 now they're gonna have to. We're gonna start seeing moves, more and more of these moves being made. Like this is the first domino to fall, and it's a huge one.
Yeah.
But we are going to start seeing more and more of these dominoes now fall because nobody wants to be left behind. And if they don't act now, they will be.
And that's what's going to be fascinating is to watch, like, with the playoff changes, like all those things, how quickly this is going to go. Because I think as much as the Pac-12 says, oh, we're not, we don't know if expansion's the best thing for us. Like, I think this move by the SEC is going to, who's going to wait around now? You don't want to be, and you don't want to be the, last one stuck there. We already talked about the Pac-12 wanting to increase their visibility. This is their opportunity. If they don't take advantage of it, I think they're in trouble, because I think the SEC is going to end up being a breakaway type league from the NCAA, and they might just keep adding programs to that, get up to 20 teams. There you go. It's, who knows, but it's going to be fun to watch. Like it's fascinating. It's, God, what a summer of content. We've got coaching changes and conference changes, and it's insane.
There's not a greater time to talk about this university right now. There's really not. And for all of this stuff to happen at one time, if it falls flat, this is going to be the biggest air out of the balloon ever if this falls flat. But it's just it's hard not to feel optimistic.
Exactly.
There's a lot to look forward to. Exactly, man. Like, and that's what hope springs eternal, and that's what it's flowing right now in Austin. And will this athletic department take advantage of the situation that they're in? Will they capitalize? Will the football program and the basketball program just harness all of this energy that they have right now? And again, if they don't win national titles this year, that's okay. Like, do you want to be successful and win championships? Of course. Just look better. Look like you're improving. Give Texas fans actual confidence, something to feel confident about, concrete, that says, okay, we are headed in the right direction. We are going to, compete at a national level moving forward. We will be relevant in national conversations again. They have to take advantage of the situation they're in now, because again, if they don't, this is also an opportunity for Texas to get left behind. You join the SEC and you don't step your game up, then you can become one of those also-rans in the SEC conference if you're not careful in terms of football specifically. If you don't capitalize right now and get on top of this, there is a possibility that you could just become a middle-of-the-road SEC team, and that's the worst case. It's not the worst case, but it's pretty damn close. And so it's important that they get out in front of this, and I think Sark will. And Chris Beard is looking at that SEC schedule and thinking, yeah, I can deal with that.
Yeah, no kidding.
No, but yeah, man, there's a lot to talk about with all the moves that have been made, and it's becoming increasingly more and more exciting on the 40 acres in terms of the hype, at least. Now, let's see if they can capitalize on it.
It's moving rapidly too. I'm sure next week it's going to, we'll probably have a whole nother batch of news on this that, we'll see. It's exciting times. So, well, man, let's head on to, let's talk some Austin FC, man. Let's hit on this real quick. We're going to the game tonight against Colorado. This is, talk about optimism. We're just waiting on this offense to kind of get it together, and they made some signings. We mentioned Gite. We're still waiting on him. Whether his plane got lost or he is he on a milk carton yet? Have we sent out the search party? But hopefully he'll arrive soon. And
is the post office responsible for his delivery? Because that would make sense.
Yeah, there's a sticker on the door at Q2. We attempted delivery today, Nobody answered, so you're gonna have to actually come to the office
You're
to
gonna
pick
have
it
to
up.
come to the office to pick 'em up.
And
Yeah.
after 3 weeks, it's return to shipper. So,
Yeah.
no, this team, I'm still feeling pretty good about it. Obviously the Seattle loss was bad. That was
Yep.
75% possession, not scoring a goal against essentially their teenage reserve team. And, the Seattle goal was something special, but still, like, that's a game Austin FC should have won, and at worst get a point out of it. But they didn't. The attacking's
Of
being
this,
addressed with the new signings. We mentioned Gite. Sebastian Driussi is official, the third designated player signing. He's going to bring some spark. He won't be in the lineup tonight, but hopefully next week against Houston, he'll make his debut. This team needs goals. They're second in the Western Conference in lowest goals allowed. I mean, Stuber has a big say in that. The defense has been good. If this team can start scoring goals, we've been saying this, like, they're back in the playoff picture, and it needs to
yeah. Well,
start.
you beat the Rapids tonight, and then beat the Dynamo, and you're right back in the playoff. Huh?
Yep.
Like, you're in it, and I know it's easier said than done. Just get 6 points out of the next two, and you're in. But they've got to find a way. And if that's like you mentioned yesterday when we were chatting, if that means putting Gallagher up, up top, and sort of trying to create something there, right? Like, is there somebody in mind specifically that you would like to see with the players available to you right now? Is there something? What would you like to see up front? Up of what we've seen, is there any combination that you think might give them the best opportunity to find the back of the net?
Honestly, I'd give Mackenzie Gaines the start tonight. Another new signing, the local guy that's now official. He was on trial and appeared in the Tigres friendly, and he looked like he was threatening with playing up front as a forward. And I would start him tonight. I wouldn't mind having Gallagher on the left and Stroud on the right, and then kind of that way you can play Dominguez a little bit more withdrawn, let him create a bit, and which is more of his natural position instead of this like kind of false nine or forward position that they've been putting Dominguez in. So I'd say give Gaines the start or play Gallagher up front. Those would be my 1 and 2 guys that I would either start or have come on as a sub and play that real a real number 9 forward role. So if anything, I just want because this team, when Gite does arrive and when Driussi is ready to go, like, they're going to have to play a different formation than they've been playing anyway, because there's going to be a proper, like, a real striker. And why not actually go ahead and start doing that now and putting the other players into their natural positions, and go ahead and get that formation down. So when these guys are ready, you can plug them in for Gaines or plug them in for Gallagher and take off from there. So we'll see. I think the goals are going to come. It's just, yeah, it's frustrating. So we'll see tonight. Hopefully they can, they're due to score about 5. So let's have a big night out there tonight.
It's going to be a blast. And like you said, we'll be there tonight. We'll be there front row right behind the goal there. It's going to be a good environment, because it always is, but it sure would be nice to blow the roof off of that place and get a couple of goals scored.
Yep.
And light the Stadium Verde and
Yep.
And get it going, because they need it. And Colorado is a good team to do it against. Like, make it happen. I feel like they can make this happen tonight. And we'll actually next weekend I'll actually be in Denver, and I'll be going to the Rapids match on that Saturday. So we're going to get a preview this week of what they're going to bring to the table, and when we're down there and visiting them. But it's just a game where something's got to click. Waiting for that, relying on these guys that you're signing, waiting. It just feels like it's like it feels like it's waiting to explode. It feels like it's the top is ready to come off, but nobody can find that
Yeah.
whatever that missing link is. Like whether it's Alex Ring, who did obviously has had that really nice header on the goal that he scored, but then lately you just see everything that he does has been right at the keeper. They're not challenged. They're not even making the opposing goalkeepers work hard to make these saves. It's just a lack of finishing right now. And this goal scoring is contagious.
Yeah.
Once one person gets that going, it's contagious. For some reason, that's just the way that it works. And if somebody can come out and maybe get a brace tonight, score a couple of goals, and lead the team to victory, and then somebody else wants to do it the next night and pick it up, and then Gite gets there, and Drusi gets there, and then it's like you actually have guys, like you said, that are natural strikers, that are goal scorers to have up at the top, that have those skills and have shown it in the past to finish as they should. It would be nice to get that momentum rolling ahead of time before those guys get in, and we'll see if they can do it. Started off tonight against the Rapids. So it'll be fun, and we'll try to get a report in on that. But it's going to be loud tonight. It's going to be raucous at Q2 no matter what. So we'll have a good time and talk about it afterwards. So
Yeah, for sure. Well, man, let's hit on a couple quick notes here before calling it a day. Let's there's a little bit of recruiting news for the basketball team, for the Runnin Horns. We mentioned the Arterio Morris commitment, which was huge, and talked about kind of how Keontae George, this looked to seem like a package kind of deal. You get Morris, and it seemed like George was on the way. His commitment he's going to be announcing it August 8th, but it looks like things are trending towards Baylor here, which kind of came out of the blue. Any thoughts on that? I mean, obviously we don't know if this is for sure, and it's just rumor mill type stuff.
Yeah,
we'll find out on the 8th.
Well, it was down to those two. It was down to Texas and Baylor with George, and we did sort of think, an Arterio Morris committed because they're teammates. They'll be teammates this year, their final year of high school, and it was sort of an understood thing. We thought that they were going to end up coming together, but George is is considered a top 5 player in the country, and it looks like whatever magic Scott Drew has worked has gotten to him, because the winds have definitely shifted from being a hard Texas lean to now it seems like he's much more towards the Baylor side at this point. There's still time. There's still, like you said, he's announced that he's going to commit on August 8th. So there's still time to get back in there, and who knows?
Yeah.
It's one of those things where if Chris Beard can get in there and talk to him and say, hey man, remember, we're building this, we're moving here and maybe that's the argument with Scott Drew, is like, hey, look at all this. You're going to go to the SEC and for basketball now, as opposed to this. And I don't know if that's being used as a tool or not, but with the type of talent that George is, I don't know that he's really thinking too much past a year or two in school anyway. But it just seems like he's leaning more towards Baylor now. So we'll see what happens on the 8th. Got about a little over a week before he commits. So it would be a really nice get for Beard on a roster that he's put together right now that will need to fill some holes, because a lot of these guys that he's brought on are towards the back end of their eligibility that he brought in through the train. Not all of them, but some of them don't have a ton of eligibility left. So it's going to be important to bring in these replacements of that caliber. And there aren't many higher caliber recruits than Keontae George for that class. So we'll see about a week out before that decision's made, and maybe Beard can get in there and sneak that one back over. But it sure would be nice to lend a player of that caliber to go along with Morris in that class.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, if anything, I kind of have faith in Chris Beard's recruiting at this point. Like, if you miss out on George, you would hate to. I mean, obviously he's a player you want, but it's I have no doubt he'll go and continue to build this roster in such a amazing manner that he has. So I don't know. We'll see. Maybe the Baylor smoke is a little bit of wanting to hype up the commitment, not make it seem like seen that before in some football recruiting that like,
deal.
yeah, this kind of like, oh, there's rumors about this one just to add a little excitement to the commitment date. So who knows? Who knows? Meanwhile, David Pierce added another member to the Runnin Horns. This was an interesting one. Jack O'Dowd, a transfer from Vanderbilt. I mean, hell of a program there. Coming in, believe this was his freshman season
Right.
at Vanderbilt. So he's coming in with, 3 more years at least of eligibility, I would think. What do you know about this? This is kind of he's an infielder, right? Like kind of got.
Yeah, he has that good infield glove, has improved as the season went along. They're really high IQ guy. And that it's not, you say, well, he played for Vanderbilt. He's a smart kid, but like baseball IQ wise, like he's one of those kind of guys that you want on your team. Just that makes your clubhouse better. He's already a good player. He's got a good bat. He's a left-handed bat. I think he throws right-handed actually, but he hits from the left side. But the connection here, so Troy Tulowitzki, who's on the Longhorn staff at this moment, obviously spent most of his career with the Colorado Rockies. Well, Jack O'Dowd's father was the general manager of the Colorado Rockies when Troy Tulowitzki was there. So there's a connection there, but also from what I'm hearing, there's a specific like a virtual reality training software that Vanderbilt actually uses as well, but Texas has started to use it, and a lot of the MLB teams use it as well. It's called Win Reality, WIN, like all caps. I don't know what it's an acronym for, but WIN Reality, and it's something that, because Texas is out in the forefront of that, they were able. That was one of their main reasons why he came over, because Texas was able to at least keep up with that competition in that regard, that with what Vanderbilt was providing as well. It was sort of, this was, to use a baseball term, out of left field, but it's definitely a welcome addition. And it just sort of shows that Texas now has the type of coaches, whether it doesn't matter what sport, that's going to work the transfer portal, that is going to actually run a program in 2021 and not in 1997.
Right.
Because aside from all of the downfalls that have happened in these programs, I just feel like these coaches that have been on campus have been recruiting and coaching and all of these things like they were still in the 90s. And This is 2021. And these coaches now on campus are 2021 coaches. Even Pierce, who's been around the game for such a long time, is open to doing these sort of things and going out and bringing in guys to replace talented players with other talented players, and not just relying on your recruiting classes to do it. So it's a great get for those Runnin Horns, and David Pierce has shown once again that he's the right guy for the job.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm curious to see what else they do this offseason. There might be more on the way.
I wouldn't be surprised.
No, not at all. That team's going to be stacked for next year.
Yeah.
Looking forward to that.
Absolutely. There should not be much of a drop off in that program next year.
No.
They might not win 4-11 games. I don't know how many games did they win this. I'm not saying that, but they're going to be really good. And barring injuries and barring anything crazy, they're going to be in the discussion again to go to Omaha. So it's adding guys like this to your program only make it better. And not, this is the type of thing that you got to see these quality. It's not just like, oh, we got a bat that came in to replace a thing that's just going to sort of fill a spot here. No, this guy's going to play, and he's going to fill an infield position somewhere. They'll find a place for him to play.
Yeah.
And aside from that, having left-handed bats in the lineup, not just being an up and down, right-handed batting team, adding a solid left-handed bat to your lineup never hurts.
No, not at all. Not at all. No, that's what they're just building, so much depth.
Yep.
Guys that you can play in multiple positions, and Yeah, this team's loaded. It's awesome. it's it's a good feeling. Maybe I got my
Yeah.
burnt orange glasses on again, but yeah, I'm looking forward to
Yeah,
it's
well, but who's going to argue with you on that though? Like, who's going to argue with optimism about the baseball program? Who can argue with you about
right.
optimism about the basketball program? Who's going to argue with you about optimism for the football program? You can argue that they haven't done it, but how can you sit there and tell a Texas fan that they shouldn't be optimistic about
Right.
the future? And all of these programs across the board, you can make the arguments that, well, they haven't done it lately, but why shouldn't Texas fans be optimistic and excited? There are no reasons why. Like, there's not just this rollover of Shaka Smart coming back where you're going to, that is a way to not get me excited about basketball. But you bring in Chris Beard, who then fills out a roster with what amounts to a college basketball all-star team, and has now recruited one of the top point guards in the country for the 2022 class, and is going to try to flip back this guy who was his teammate in high school. That's a top 5 guy. There's plenty to be excited about. There's plenty to be optimistic. And I don't think you have to be wearing orange glasses per se to see that and to understand that.
Well, and that's what, man, I'm glad you mentioned the basketball thing, because the optimism is running really high. And I think, it's not like this program was bad last year. I mean, the way that it ended was awful, but like, I mean, what we're going to wrap up here, Texas had 3 players off that team drafted in the NBA draft the other night. Like, it's not like this program was just absolutely miserable, and that's what there is optimism. There should be. But yeah, let's continue to see what Beard does as we get closer to the fall. But yeah, let's hit on the NBA stuff with the Runnin Horns real quick, and we'll wrap it up. Oh, I still got you, Jay.
Yeah, you
There we
got.
go. Let's talk about Kai Jones. This was a guy that I guess going into last season, I mean, it was like, okay, you can kind of see he's got the attributes you want, but he was still kind of a raw player. He's a first round draft pick, man. Congrats to Kai going 19th, I guess originally to the New York Knicks and then getting traded to Charlotte. But man, what a rise for him.
Yeah, absolutely. And when we were going into last season, I think the assumption was that Greg Brown would have been the first player off the board, the first Longhorn drafted. And we said, I was very adamant about the fact that that Greg Brown shouldn't be a first round draft pick. And he wasn't. He was drafted 43rd. So mid-second round, which is probably about where he deserved to go. Kai Jones getting picked 19 and going to Charlotte, when there were whispers that Charlotte might have wanted to take him at 11. And he was that much on their radar that the Hornets were interested in him at pick 11. And then to go down to 19 for Charlotte to be able to trade the Knicks and get the draft rights to Kai Jones, it was obvious that, that they valued him. And I bet that there were other teams that valued him too, and that were willing to go up and make a trade, or if he would have slid any farther down into the first round, would have been happy to hop on Kai Jones. Yeah, like you said, congrats to him for busting his ass and working hard and improving his stock, because man, that and having a good showing at the NBA Combine, like really showing out. And Jericho Sims did the same thing as well. But to wrap up Kai Jones, happy for the kid for finding the success that he found. Now, Greg Brown falling down to the middle of the second round should absolutely surprise nobody, judging off of the performance on court last year. He went from being a projected lottery pick with the raw ability that he has, and there's a reason that he was still drafted.
Right.
Like the ability's there. You see all the measurables, all of the intangibles in terms of basketball play.
Right.
When he's on, when his head is right, that's when he's at his best. And when he's not, he's checked out. And the consistency is going to be something that he's going to definitely have to work on in the NBA. Otherwise, he may bounce around for a little bit, and then, he might not last long in the league if he can't. And he's young. He's still so young. He's got he's got this time. Hopefully, he can get into a situation now where he can get that sort of guidance, that veteran leadership, and find a way to, I guess, just be consistent, man. So he's going to Portland now, which if Dame Lillard is there, because there's talks about Lillard being traded and all this. If Portland isn't an awful spot to be in, but it's just, he's going to need some leadership. He's going to need somebody to take him aside and say, you got to work harder. You've got to give more effort, and you've got to actually produce. And if he doesn't do that, the NBA doesn't give a shit. Second round contracts aren't guaranteed. They'll cut you and you'll be on the street. You'll be playing in Ice Cube's, the Big Three League or whatever, which is actually some decent television. But, and they're semi-successful actually as well. But the whole point is you won't last in the league with the type of effort that Greg Brown put on the floor last year.
Well,
so
and I think it'll, when you're a professional, it adds a different thing to it. I think he is a young guy. It was college, stuff like that. I think now he's getting paid. It's a job. He's a professional. I think he'll be all right.
Again, he made the decision to go to school last year, to play school, if you will, right? Like, there was the options to go to the G League, the Ignite team, that is for that exact thing, where it's like guys that necessarily might not want to go to college but want to start their professional careers early. And Green was the number 2 pick in the draft to the Rockets that played on that G League team last year. So, like, he had that option, chose to go to Texas. It did not, obviously. I guarantee he would tell you it didn't go the way that he wanted it to go. And if he can turn that around, the skill set is there.
Right. Right.
The wingspan, the athleticism, it's all there. And if he can put it together, he will have a nice NBA career, because he's a big dude. He has all of those things that you want in a right now NBA player of that size. But you have to put the effort in, and hopefully he'll do that. But the one that I'm the most excited about, Kerry, the draft pick that I'm most excited about is the Jericho Sims pick, going to the Knicks late in the second round. He definitely earned being drafted. I'm glad that somebody drafted him, and he absolutely earned that and deserved that. And the Knicks, I feel like, got an absolute steal at the end of the second round with Jericho Sims.
Yeah. If you would have asked me before the draft, I think we all would have unanimously said Kai Jones is going to be the first Longhorn off the board. I actually wouldn't have been surprised at all if you would have swapped the positions where Greg Brown and Jericho Sims got drafted. I was thinking, just with the way that, kind of the discussion around Sims, his performance at the combine, everything that he was doing, he definitely felt he was going to get drafted. But yeah, I think the Knicks got great value for him, because I would not have been surprised if he would have gone earlier in the second round. And that's another guy, I think, just with the bulk that he was able to put on during his time at Texas, and he's going to get, what an opportunity. It's the Knicks, but it's the big stage. At least he's going to,
yeah.
But also he's a late second round pick. There's not going to be that typical kind of pressure, I don't think, on a guy going to New York in that situation. Now, if he was drafted in the top 5 going to New York, that's a different story. But
no, but can't you see him going into New York and instantly being a fan favorite? Like, can't you? Because he busts his ass. He works super hard. He does the things that a lot of people don't want to do. He plays good defense. He rebounds the basketball. He scores the ball really well around the bucket. Like, these are all things that fan bases value, that franchises value, that head coaches value. And it makes me, I feel like Jericho Sims is going to have a better NBA career than Greg Brown.
And that wouldn't surprise me.
Would not have shocked me at all if Sims went ahead of Greg Brown, but you live off of that blue chip pedigree.
Right.
And which he has. And somebody looks at that and says, damn, if he would have been able to come out, he would have been a lottery pick out of high school. And now we're getting him in the middle of the second round. What happened? Like, there's still talent there. So it's just in a matter of evaluation, a matter of what do you value? How do you view this particular guy? I would have taken Sims before I took Greg Brown. I've said that before.
Yep.
Excuse me, but I think it's an interesting spot for him. It's not like if he gets run, you're gonna see him be successful. It's what he does when he's on the floor. He's in the middle of it. He will have success as long as he gets some run with the Knicks, and I think they're gonna really love him up there. And
yeah, he's a hard worker. Any fan base would loves those type of players, and I think he'll do well there.
Because they're going to tell that story about how every year in college basketball he worked and worked and worked and improved and improved and improved and got to where he is. Fan bases eat that shit up, and I get it. Because it shows that the guy's willing to put in the work,
right?
And that he's going to give what he needs to give for your team to be successful. And you can't have enough of those guys in your locker room. So yeah, I think the Knicks fans will love him, and his teammates are going to love him. Those coaches are going to love him. And it is the Knicks. They're a dumpster fire of a franchise at this point.
And they made the playoffs this past season for the first time in God, however long it was, but
probably since Patrick Ewing played for them. But I don't know if that's true, but it feels like that. And but yeah, they're going to love him up there. So congrats to all the guys for getting drafted. There's no knocking. You get drafted in a 2-round NBA draft, and that's a big deal. And you dream of getting your name called, and all three of those guys did it, and they do all deserve it. And it's just going to be a matter of how do their games translate? How does that effort translate to the NBA game?
Yep.
And it'll make all the difference. But it'll be fun to follow them.
Absolutely. Well, man, I think that's about it for today. We got anything else?
No, I feel like my voice, I've been talking a little bit louder today. I've been really getting amped up with this SEC talk and all this. Yeah. So
we got the game tonight. You got to warm up get those vocal cords warmed up for tonight.
I gotta wear like one of those shirts that the singing competition people wear. And it's like, do not talk to me. I can't speak right now. Gotta preserve the voice a little bit for the rest of the
get you some green tea and a little honey.
Yeah, some chamomile perhaps.
Yep. Take care of those vocal cords and get it nice and fresh.
Lavender in the air, maybe.
Ah, that sounds really nice.
I think I'll have that.
Pleasant. Oh man. Well, it's been a good one, man. Let's God, so much will change in a week. I can't wait to see what happens this coming week. The conference realignment and all the insanity. So, yeah, man, let's do it again.
We'll talk about it again. Thanks for listening, everybody. Appreciate you guys. Hook up.
Thanks, everybody.
ATX representing. Fatal, baby.
Falling on 6 on a Saturday. Can the drip and swing down?